Another blackout. Great, Enzo Arnaud muttered, prodding the phone's dead screen with evident frustration. His dark hair clung to his forehead, rain-soaked curls sculpted into soft shapes as he paced like a caged animal. The tension was palpable, a tightly wound coil ready to snap. I swear, one of these days. Probably the syndicate trying to throw us off. We're deep in enemy territory now. Tonja turned her sharp green gaze toward him, trying to read the lines of worry etched on his face. In this dwindling light, he appeared more enigmatic than usual, shadows dancing across his features, revealing glimpses of hesitation. But we can handle it. We always do. He looked at her, his stormy blue eyes reflecting a mixture of admiration and concern. Tonja, there's handling it, and then there's playing with fire. We're surrounded by flames. No backup, no intel. I mean, we could have called it a day and gone home safe. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, a blushing warmth born not from embarrassment but an undercurrent of unspoken tension between them. And run away? Leave this case for someone else to sully? If we're going to stand firm against this, we have to do it together. Together, he echoed, the weight of the word hanging like a shimmering droplet, both reassuring and intimidating. He stepped closer, a deliberate move that made her pulse quicken. The scent of rain-soaked jasmine wafted through the open window, fragrant and intrusive, blended with the unyielding musk of their cluttered space. Lightning flashed again, and for a fleeting moment, the flashes revealed a raw pulse of vulnerability in Enzo's eyes that made her breath hitch. She could sense the electricity between them, the tension that had been building through shared glances and silent gestures during their investigation. It was as though the storm outside had woven itself into the very fabric of their relationship, threading through their conversations, unspoken fears, and undeniable attraction. What if we're not enough to face whatever's coming? His voice dropped, the uncertainty pooling between them like water gathering at their feet. Tonja closed the gap, standing mere inches from him. It's not about being enough. It's about trust. I trust you, Enzo. The words tumbled out, raw and honest. The air felt charged, electric, as he searched her face for sincerity. Just inches apart now, the world outside faded, leaving only their mutual isolation and the thunderous cacophony of their hearts. Trust. He leaned closer, any pretenses of distance shattering as their breaths mingled in the damp air. And if I told you I was scared? Good, she whispered, their lips almost touching, suspended in a moment fraught with potential. Being scared means you care. It means you're human. In the reflection of a distant lightning flash, she could see her own yearning mirrored in his eyes. The kiss came as if pulled by the weight of gravity itself, tentative yet fervent. Their lips met, a collision of warmth and urgency, sweeping them into an embrace laced with the raw passion of danger and unsaid words. But the kiss was more than just that. It was an anchoring force. The world outside could rage, the storm could howl, but here, within this moment, they found a calm. The ambiance morphed. The raindrops transformed into a symphony, setting the cadence for their unyielding connection. Suddenly, the jarring sound of a door being flung open broke their spell, leaving their connection trembling in the aftermath. The darkness of the storm battled against their newly forged ties, and reluctance seeped back into the very air they inhaled. Tonja, Enzo, Rosie Santana's voice echoed down the hallway. You two better be hiding from a syndicate hit squad and not whatever this is. Tonja broke away, laughter bubbling up despite the tension, both light and relief merging. Enzo ran a hand through his hair, the likeness of the mess outside softening with warmth. Maybe we can convince her of the hit squad, he said, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth, though his gaze remained spiraled toward the door. The world outside might have been out of reach, but at that moment, within the tumultuous chaos of rain, they found some semblance of safety, holding on to those dropped connections they'd forged anew. Scene 53. In the eye of the storm. The dim light of the desk lamp cast wavering shadows across the cramped office of the FBI's Quantico branch. Papers were strewn about like memories littered across the floor. A faint aroma of coffee mingled with the sterile scent of cold air from the drafts that slipped through the window frames. Tonja Coleman leaned back in her chair, her tall frame tense and unyielding, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to snap. Just moments before, intense chatter about the latest investigation had occupied the room. Now, only the faint hum of the fridge in the corner punctuated an oppressive silence. Outside, a storm-brewed Antarctic winds howled and spit rain against the stained glass windows. It felt like the tempest mirrored the chaos within her mind. She closed her eyes momentarily, seeking solace, but the storm inside reared its head. A vision pierced through the dark. Her parents, surprised and confused, standing in the living room of their home in the town she'd fought so hard to protect. Tornadoed emotions surged, rendering her breath shallow. They were in danger, and pulses of urgency rippled down her spine. Tonja? Enzo's voice pulled her back. His concern was palpable, a protective energy that drew her like a magnet. He folded his arms, leaning against the doorframe as a wild gust rattled the windows. "You good?" She opened her eyes, the blue of his gaze cutting through the haze like vivid lightning. "I saw something. Something at my parents' house." Her voice was steady. She fought to maintain control. "I'll drive us there." Enzo moved closer, the scent of his aftershave, a hint of cedar and spice, wrapping around her. No time to waste. His usual charm softened, replaced by an intensity that flickered between professionalism and something deeper. "Please, it could be." She hesitated, the weight of her words catching in her throat. They both recognized the undercurrent of fear at the edge of her statement. "Could be what, Tonja?" He prodded gently. "An attack. Something big," she whispered, the storm outside roaring louder, echoing the tremors in her heart. He pushed off the doorframe, stepping closer still, his towering presence a comfort and a challenge. "Then let's not waste a second." The urgency in his tones surged with a promise, an unspoken bond of trust binding them in this moment. "You lead the way." The rain began to pelt down harder, erratic and furious, as they hastily made their way to the car. Enzo's silent concern electrified the air between them. Each unspoken thought sat heavy, brimming just beneath the surface. Once inside the car, the tension morphed into something palpable, charged with their barely concealed emotions. Rain hammered against the roof like a frantic heartbeat as he flicked on the headlights, illuminating the darkened road ahead. "Stay focused on what you saw. We'll get them to safety." Tonja studied him as they drove, his jaw clenched, eyes scanning the road with piercing precision. Moments passed, their breaths seemingly in sync, both acutely aware that whatever lay ahead was not just a case. It was intensely personal. His profile caught her attention momentarily. Wrought with tension yet crafted with determination, he was in for the fight, and she found herself leaning closer. "Just be careful, okay?" she said, her voice softer, laced with layers of emotion. She felt the electric pulse between them begin to shimmer, a connection deepening in the silence. Always. His gaze flicked toward her, a flicker of something unsaid flashing in the space between them. "You know I've got your back." The atmosphere inside the car tightened, and silence spoke louder than thunder. Tonja turned to him, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. "I won't let anything happen to them. Not again." Enzo nodded slowly, his voice low and throaty. "We'll protect them, Tonja. No one gets hurt on my watch." The determination in his words, fierce and resolute, stirred something within her, a mixture of comfort and uncertainty. "I'd trust you in a heartbeat," she confessed, her words a soft caress in the charged air. Then, almost on instinct, her hand brushed against his on the gearshift. It lingered, a moment suspended in time. She could almost taste the rain on her tongue, the longing and potential swirling relentlessly between them. Enzo turned his hand slightly, and their fingers tangled. The connection felt electric, a promise interwoven with intent. The horizon widened with storm clouds, dark and unfurling. The looming threat ahead seemed insatiable. Yet in this moment grasped tightly together, there was light. Scene 54, Seeking Solace. The cold wind pierced through the vibrant autumn foliage, swirling orange and gold leaves around Tonja Coleman as she opened the door to the family's rustic cabin. The wooden floors creaked beneath her feet, accompanied by the faint scent of pine. Shadows danced along the walls, cast by the dying daylight filtering through the tall windows. Tonja wrapped her arms around herself, momentarily grounding herself against the tide of uncertainty that seemed to flood her mind. "Dad, you here?" she called out, her voice echoing softly through the cozy chambers of their secluded sanctuary. A flicker of flame suggested he was in the den, where the fireplace crackled, casting warmth and light. As she entered, she found her father, Colonel Jamal Coleman, reclining in his favorite armchair, a book resting on his lap. He looked up, his steel-gray eyes filled with a mix of wisdom and concern. "Tonja, there you are," he said warmly, setting the book aside. "Come sit." She approached, settling onto the edge of a worn leather couch, the plush fabric inviting yet holding the weight of unspoken worries. Outside, turbulent clouds rolled in, mimicking her thoughts. "It's been a hell of a week," she sighed, running a hand through her short, tightly curled hair. Her father remained silent, steady. "Your voice, Tonja," Jamal urged gently. The air thickened as moisture gathered in the atmosphere, promising an impending storm. "I found something unsettling," she began, choosing her words carefully as flashes of crime scene evidence assaulted her thoughts. "The case, it's taken a turn I wasn't expecting. I wish I could explain it all, but—" He gestured for her to continue. The familiar sense of safety her father exuded encouraged her to delve deeper. "There's this killer, Dad. And it's not just about the crimes anymore. There's a whole operation behind it, a network of lies woven so intricately that it feels insurmountable." "The world can sometimes be a dark place, Tonja," he replied, his tone unwavering. "What matters is how we choose to engage with that darkness." His words struck her like raindrops on parched earth. "I feel like I'm losing my grip," she admitted, glancing out the window. Thunder rolled in the distance, mirroring the turmoil in her heart. "Every vision wounds me. It makes it harder to separate what's real from what's in my head." He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, a father ready to dismantle her storm with guiding wisdom. "You're not defined by those visions, nor are you alone in this fight. You have someone by your side, Enzo." At the mention of his name, a flicker of warmth ignited in Tonja's chest. "But it's complicated," she murmured, her gaze shifting to the flames dancing in the hearth. "The fake engagement. It's becoming a line I don't know how to walk." "Complexities often bring clarity," Jamal said, his voice calming. The fire crackled, embers floating like tiny fireworks along a path only they could see. "What do you truly want from this situation?" she pondered, her heart a tumult of fear and want. "I want to do my job, to keep everyone safe, but there's a part of me that craves something more, something real." "Then it's time to act on that desire," he said decisively. "Stop waiting for the right moment to rise to the surface. Create one." The storm outside intensified as if echoing his insistence, wind howling through the trees. A shiver lanced through her, yet a newfound resolve anchored her spirit. Just then, a loud crack of thunder electrified the air, causing her to jump. She met her father's knowing smile with a chuckle. "Really setting the mood, aren't they?" "Mother Nature has impeccable timing," he replied, the warmth in his tone compounding the joy that tinged her anxiety. Tonja smiled, her thoughts shifting from the heaviness of her dilemmas to the lightness of laughter with her father. "How often do you think one should confess to having feelings for someone? Is it risky or just foolish?" "It depends," he replied, raising an eyebrow. "What are you afraid of? Vulnerability can lead to intimacy. Trust me, my daughter, choosing to be brave is rarely foolish." As she contemplated his words, the storm outside raged on, a symphony of chaos. Yet in this moment, she felt a reprieve, a flicker of clarity cutting through the darkness. "You always know how to make me see the light in a storm, Dad." Jamal grinned, the bonds of love and authenticity radiating between them. "Just remember, true strength comes from embracing both light and dark." With a nod, Tonja absorbed his wisdom, ready to face the uncertainties ahead, her father's unwavering faith supporting her like the sturdy walls of the cabin sheltering them from the storm outside. Scene 55, The Bottleneck. In the austere fluorescent glow of the FBI conference room, the air hung thick with tension, sharp as a blade, ready to slice open the carefully stitched seams of their case. Tonja Coleman leaned against the conference table, arms crossed tightly, her brow furrowed as she regarded the assembled agents. The murmurs of hushed debates slid through the space like shadows, her eyes flickering to her partner, Enzo Arnaud, who stood near the doorway, his gaze focused on the floor. "Are we actually going to let bureaucratic red tape derail our investigation?" Tonja asked, her voice cool but intense, cutting through the murmurs with measured precision. Agent Martinez, his fingers drumming against the table, replied, It's protocol, Tonja. You know that. He leaned back in his chair, the click of it echoing like a clock winding down. We need the higher-ups to sign off on our next steps. This isn't just about us. There are layers to the case we're unaware of. Layers that could put lives at risk, Tonja snapped, her frustration bubbling to the surface. She unfolded her arms, stepping closer to the table, projecting the raw energy she felt. You all know what we're up against. A syndicate that's already blackmailing one of our own. Waiting isn't an option. Enzo shifted his weight, his dark eyes cutting through the room to meet hers, silently communicating what words often couldn't. The fleeting glance between them was electric, charged with an understanding that pulsed beneath their professional personas. Exactly, he interjected smoothly, stepping forward with an unwavering calmness that pulled every gaze toward him. If we're waiting for clearance, we're giving the syndicate our heads on a platter. We need to move now. Teamwork does not equal anarchy, Martinez snapped, irritation flaring as he straightened in his seat. You two can't just... Before he could finish, the door swung open, and a new figure entered. Rosie Santana, her curly hair bouncing, eyes alight with unmistakable mischief. It was a welcome contrast to the sterile environment. Did someone say anarchy? Because I'm all in. Her light-hearted tone offered a break in the tension, momentarily drawing chuckles from others. Rosie, not now, Tonja sighed, but the corners of her mouth lifted slightly despite herself. Oh, come on. We are a team, are we not? Rosie propped her hands on her hips, gesturing to the grumbling agents. Let's add a little flair to this official snooze fest. How about a little field operation that screams excitement? Like I said, Martinez pressed, his tone exasperated. We need clearance. This isn't a movie, folks. A spark of mischief flickered in Enzo's eyes. Well, movies often feature leads who take matters into their own hands. He darted a glance at Tonja, finding both her frustration and determination captivating. Besides, with Tonja's unique abilities, we could coordinate without official sanction. Enzo, we can't just ignore the rules, Tonja warned, yet her voice held an underlying palpitation that suggested she was momentarily swayed by his charisma. The room grew quiet, the air pinching between them like a taut string. Just then, Rosie suddenly brightened, clapping her hands together. I know. Let's pull an undercover operation. The shadows will eat up the bureaucracy, and we can extract information faster than they can say protocol. The agents exchanged looks, the fire of Rosie's enthusiasm igniting a flicker of daring among them. But Tonja's focus was elsewhere, locked on Enzo as he tilted his head ever so slightly, a knowing song playing behind his steady gaze. He was waiting for her to decide, and his silence felt like an invitation. Taking a breath, she closed the distance between them, her body brushing against his, the warmth igniting an electric hum in her core. She could almost taste the tension hanging between them, an uncharted territory filled with potential and danger. It requires trust, and right now I'm not sure if we can afford to trust anyone but ourselves, she whispered, her heartbeat loud in the cavernous space, punctuating the moment. Tonight had merely been about an investigation, yet suddenly it morphed into something deeper. Enzo's eyes darkened, drawing her into a world where choices echoed beyond the mission. There was an unspoken resurgence of intimacy crackling between them. We'll keep it discreet, just between us, he said, his voice barely a breath against her skin. Where are you two going with this? Rosie interjected, curiously leaning, but her playful air tempered now by uncertainty. Creating a plan, Tonja replied, not breaking eye contact with Enzo. With that, a shared understanding surged like a wave, and before she could rethink, Tonja leaned in, capturing the moment with a kiss that felt like the starlit sky falling around them, brief, urgent, sealing the bond that had been edging closer in shadows. As their lips met, the barrier that once felt insurmountable crumbled, leaving only the electric pulse of their connection, a promise unspoken amidst the chaos that surrounded them. In that heartbeat, the world outside faded away, replaced by the rhythm of shared breaths and the drifting of possibility. What lay ahead was uncertain, but in that moment, everything felt indelibly real. Okay, let's do this, Tonja murmured breathlessly, pulling back to meet Enzo's gaze, where the mix of ambition and affection shimmered like a beacon in the dark of night. As the team moved forward, the ticking clock wasn't their biggest threat. It was the danger of secrets whispering beneath the surface, waiting to shatter the fragile peace they had built. Scene 56, ominous signs. The fingers of the setting sun cast elongated shadows across the polished oak table at Café Étoile, filling the air with the rich aroma of brewing coffee and the subtle sweetness of French pastries. Tonja Coleman leaned in, her emerald eyes narrowed, her body tense. Do you really think it's just a coincidence that the case file went missing on the very day we were supposed to meet the informant? Enzo Arnaud, his brow furrowed in contemplation, shifted his chair slightly away from her, arms crossed and his jaw clenched. You're convinced it's deliberate, he stated flatly, a hint of irritation threading through his voice as he trailed his finger over the condensation on his iced coffee glass. That's not just a guess, Enzo. Tonja shot back, her voice laced with urgency. The informant's in hiding. We cannot afford to be blindsided again. She flicked her gaze away, the corner of her mouth curling into a slight frown, underlining her frustration. In the corner of the cafe, the soft laughter of patrons clashed with the weight of their conversation, the clinking of cups providing an unsettling backdrop. A few tables away, Rosie Santana, Tonja's closest friend, sat with her boyfriend Clyde, engaged in idle chatter but intermittently stealing glances at her friend, the tension palpable even from afar. Tonja felt her friend's concern but was too focused on the unresolved threads between her and Enzo. You always jump to conclusions, Tonja. Sure, it's suspicious, but we can't start pointing fingers without evidence, Enzo replied, his tone edged with caution. He leaned forward slightly, nostrils flaring with the intensity behind his words. Evidence! Tonja spat, her voice rising unexpectedly amidst the clatter of the cafe. You want to talk about evidence? I saw a glimpse of the scene. Remember the vision? Pain, betrayal. Whoever did this is close. They might even. She hesitated, her voice faltering as an icy wave of realization washed over her. They might be closer than we think. His expression softened for a moment, concern replacing irritation. You don't have to do this alone, you know. I'm here, Enzo implored, his dark eyes searching hers, but beneath the casual demeanor lay swirling tempests of their shared uncertainty. Tonja shook her head, her expression unreadable. Is that why you pulled away? Because you want to protect me? Enzo, sometimes you're infuriating. Their disagreement danced through the air, an electrifying tension coated with unacknowledged feelings lurking just beneath the surface. Across the cafe, Clyde leaned in closer to Rosie, whispering something that drew a light laugh from her. Tonja caught it, an unexpected pang of envy lacing her thoughts. It's easy to stay distant when you're hiding your own shadows, isn't it? Tonja continued, bitterness coloring her words. Enzo's gaze faltered, a flicker of guilt casting shadows over his features. It's not about hiding, Tonja. It's about... He hesitated, the silence stretching between them like a taut string ready to snap. I just don't want to drag you into my mess. Your mess? Tonja echoed, incredulity lacing her voice as she shifted her chair, every bit of her poised like a coiled spring. You think keeping secrets will help? That I'll just what? Sit back and let you deal with this alone? No. Her words echoed through the cafe, silencing a nearby conversation. For once, can we just focus on the case? Enzo snapped, his irritation boiling over. A vein in his temple throbbed as his posture tightened. The laughter from Rosie and Clyde seemed muted now, as if the universe itself paused. Focus? You think I'm not focused? She retorted, her voice low but fierce, color blooming in her cheeks. I'm not the one hiding things. For a moment, the world dimmed, the fiery tempest of their arguments revealing the underlying truth, exposing the cracks that had formed between them. Tonja, listen, Enzo began, then faltered, his thoughts stalling in the sudden swelling quietness. He leaned closer, the space between them humming with something fervent and unspoken. Whatever it is, we can face it together. His eyes locked onto hers, a mixture of frustration and longing, battling for dominance within him. Together, Tonja whispered, her heart racing, deep breath catching in her chest. Suddenly, the heated conversation shifted, their emotional barricades cracking under the weight of their shared vulnerability. She felt the warmth radiate from him, the unexpected magnetism drawing her in momentarily, blurring the edges of their professional facade. For a heartbeat, time elongated, the world around them fading. A whispered confession hung in the air, the myriad of emotions swirling, and just as quickly, it was gone, leaving an electric tension hanging between them. "Just promise me," Enzo finally spoke, his voice low and earnest. "No more secrets." Tonja nodded, feeling the weight of his plea settle over them like a new cloak, mingling with the residual heat of their earlier conflict as shadows danced around them. "I promise." But the looming specter of their shared peril punctuated the moment, a visceral reminder that their trust would be their only armor against the chaos encroaching. Scene 57, Backlash. The walls of the FBI office hummed with the low buzz of conversation and the incessant tapping of keyboards. A giant map of DC spread across the long conference table, littered with bright, sticky notes marking locations of suspected crime syndicate operations. The atmosphere was tense, charged with the frustration of dead ends, but Tonja Coleman sat quietly in a corner, piecing together fragments that no one else could see. At one of the desks, Enzo Arnaud, his dark hair slightly tousled, leaned over a stack of case files while shooting worried glances towards Tonja. He picked up the coffee cup, its warmth grounding, but his attention remained on her. Her tall form radiated energy and strength, yet the weight of her psychic abilities was etched into the lines of her brow. She had watched crime unfold in ways others couldn't grasp, and today the air felt heavier. "Tonja, you okay?" Enzo finally asked, his voice low but laced with concern. Tonja blinked, startled back from her thoughts. "Yeah, just piecing together a few things," she said, her tone slightly evasive. "Not about last night, right?" he teased, though there was a hint of seriousness behind it. The memories of their passionate kiss, the stolen breath, the darting heartbeats, lingered like a ghost between them. "Something like that," she replied, her eyes flitting back to the map as her fingers traced an unseen pattern in the air before her. It was a habit she had picked up, thinking aloud with her motions. But still, doubts lingered. Did last night mean something more than an uptick in tension? Was this charade crumbling beneath the weight of their chemistry? Enzo shifted in his chair, the faint creaking of wood contrasting with the silence that enveloped them. "We can't let them maneuver us into a trap, Tonja. We need to stay ahead," he said, abruptly turning serious. "We can't afford to get too close." She scowled at his warning, frustration bubbling within her. "You think I don't know that? But it's not just about keeping distance anymore. It feels complicated. We're living in a minefield." "Complicated? That's a kind way to put it," he chuckled, trying to lighten the mood, but his laughter trailed off. Tanja's gaze softened only for a moment before steeliness returned. "Enzo," she began, but then their phones buzzed in unison, a jarring interruption that punctured the bubble. The alert on the screen sent a chill down Tanja's spine. A message from Rosie, their mutual friend and one of the few who knew about Tanja's abilities. "They know," it read urgently. Enzo frowned, tension in his shoulders tightening as he braced against the desk. "Who? The syndicate? What do they know?" Tanja's mind raced, vision swirling as though trying to piece together the shattered fragments of a nightmare. "We need to go. Now." Her voice was clipped, embodying a siren's urgency. They exited the office to find chaos erupting in the corridors. Multiple agents were on the move, urgency threading through their actions. Tonja exchanged a glance with Enzo, their unspoken bond igniting a rush of adrenaline. "Cover me," she whispered as they approached a stairwell. "Always," he responded, determination emanating from his eyes. Just as they reached the landing, a loud crash echoed behind them. The sound of splintering wood erupted through the hall. "Get down!" a voice shouted, and gunfire followed, ringing like jarring bells against the walls. Tonja instinctively pushed Enzo to the side as she sprang forward, weaving through the confusion. The world around her blurred, a flurry of movement, panic shifted into focus. Her psychic abilities kicked in, a raw surge defining her actions as she grappled with the shooters who emerged from the smoke. Adrenaline fueled her strength, every thud of her heart in sync with the fight. Through the chaos, their connection amplified. Their eyes met again, grounding her even amidst turmoil. Enzo nodded, joining her side, wielding his own skills with precision as they advanced together against their unknown attackers. But then a moment of stillness, a misplaced step. The adrenaline coursed through her, instinct screamed. She turned to look back, her breath hitching as their foreheads almost touched, all chaos muted in an intense heartbeat. time suspended. "Just know," she said quickly, vulnerability spilling forth in a fleeting moment, "I trust you." The backdrop of gunfire echoed, but all she could perceive was the sincerity in his gaze. "We'll get through this, together," he promised, just before the world surged back shouting, fleeing agents. The kiss they shared was unplanned, electric, a spark igniting against the gravity of their circumstances, warm under the chaos, yet fading just as quickly as it blossomed. With a resolve renewed, they stepped back into the fray, battling against the syndicate's wrath, their hearts echoing the silent promise woven throughout their chaotic alliance. The stakes were higher than they had dared to imagine. Scene 58, an opening act. The air hung thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries at the small cafe near Quantico. It was uncharacteristically quiet for a Monday morning, the kind of stillness that precedes a storm, and Tonja Coleman couldn't help but shift her weight anxiously from one foot to the other. She hummed quietly to herself, her eyes flicking between the clock on the wall and the door, waiting for Enzo Arnaud to arrive. Outside, clouds darkened, casting shadows that seemed to dance ominously over the bustling street. Just as she took a sip of her steaming latte, the cafe door swung open, slamming against the wall with a sharp clap. Enzo strode in, his shirt slightly rumpled, hair tousled as if he'd been running against the wind. A chill gust followed him, rustling the papers on a nearby table, as though the universe were echoing her rising unease. "Traffic?" she asked, arching an eyebrow as he approached. "You could say that," he replied, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He nodded to the barista for a coffee of his own, then leaned against the counter beside her. "What's the rush? Did you check the latest intel on the syndicate?" Tonja asked, her voice low, laced with seriousness as she scrutinized his face for any signs of the unease that had been creeping into her own gut. "Word is, they're planning something big before the gala." Enzo's expression hardened. "Yeah, I heard. Let's hope it's just noise. They could be playing us." The barista slid a steaming cup toward him, breaking the tension just enough for Enzo to take a deep breath. "We can't assume that," Tonja countered, her voice carrying the weight of urgency. "They've been getting bolder. What if they consolidate their power at the gala? We can't let them." The soft chime of the cafe bell sounded as the door opened again. A trio of agents from the bureau walked in, their animated conversation bubbling over the cafe's tranquility. Tonja glanced at them, a quick flick of her eyes signaling to Enzo that their moment together had morphed into something slightly more precarious. A crabapple tree outside shifted under the errant wind, its branches rattling ominously. "Looks like the circus is in town," Enzo remarked, scanning the room. "Stop it," Tonja chuckled, her mood lifted a fraction by the way he so easily deflected the tension. "If they hear us discussing the case, they might take us for clowns." "Clowns? Nah, more like the acrobats who have to jump through hoops." He smirked before taking a long sip of coffee, eyes glinting with a playful spark that always seemed to glow in her presence. "You know I prefer to handle the unicycle act. Poor coordination and all." She rolled her eyes, but the laughter dissolved quickly. "Focus, Enzo. If the syndicate is gathering that kind of strength, we need to intercept. They won't simply show their cards at the gala." Enzo's gaze hardened again, determination spilling from him like iron. "You think they're meeting there? We have to catch them red-handed before they can strike. I'll set up surveillance." Tonja's pulse quickened. "We'll go together. If I can get a psychic read on one of them, maybe we can uncover their intentions." The thought tickled the edge of her nerves, both exhilarating and terrifying. The palpable electricity between them mirrored the brewing storm outside, sending shivers down her spine. Right, just like old times. Enzo raised his cup in a mock toast, eyes sparking with mischief. "Less banter, more action," she teased back. Their playful exchanges, they had become her refuge amidst the chaos. As Enzo leaned in slightly, whispering, "So shall we play house again? Your dad's coming over for dinner soon, isn't he?" A sudden roar of thunder echoed through the heavens, seemingly agreeing with him. Tonja raised an eyebrow, surprising herself with a flurry of warmth exploding within her. "Don't you dare, it's still a fake engagement." Though she felt the unsteady ground of their situation tremble beneath her, one truth remained embedded in her core. She would do anything to protect him, Only if you're attempting to distract me, Miss Coleman. His eyes gleamed with a teasing challenge, and for a brief moment, the storm outside was forgotten. Focus, Enzo, she urged, though she felt her resolve wane, a sweet tension weaving through the air between them like threads of silk. In that case, he said, leaning back slightly, how about we forget dinner and focus on the show that's coming to town? Tonja's heart raced. The show indeed, she replied, glancing out at the deepening gray skies, knowing that the opening act was just beginning. Scene 59. Gathering Intel. The chill of the night air wrapped around Tonja Coleman as she and Enzo Arnaud slipped through the narrow, shadow-drenched alley behind the opulent gala. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses filtered from the grand ballroom, an extravagant contrast to the tension thrumming between them. They both paused, Tonja adjusting the collar of her sleek black dress while Enzo ruffled the cuffs of his crisp white shirt, the perfect attire for a couple enacting a charade of romance. "Does it bother you?" Tonja asked quietly, glancing at him from the corner of her eye, her voice barely more than a breath above the rustle of leaves. Pretending to be engaged? His brow creased slightly as he contemplated her question. "Only when it feels more real than the last time we pretended," he replied, his words swimming in a current of gravity. Tonja arched an eyebrow, brushing her fingertips against the steel facade of a building, fingers tinged with the chill of the night. "It's just a ruse, Enzo. Why would you feel jealousy?" She grasped an edge of her dress as a hint of a challenge danced behind her eyes. A beat of silence stretched between them, pierced only by the distant pulse of music. Enzo took a step closer, his heart racing for reasons he was reluctant to acknowledge. "You know I'm not jealous," he said firmly, yet the weight of his words lingered as he surveyed the path ahead. "But seeing you with anyone else, that can be difficult, especially here." Tonja turned to him, the energy between them shifting, charged. "So anyone else means something to you? What's the point of the act, then? We're deep in this investigation, Enzo, not playing house." "Are we?" He shot back, his voice a low growl that hung heavy in the air. "Pretending to be a couple feels like practice for when this is all over, and I don't want to lose sight of what we are." His words ignited a spark in her chest, and she crossed her arms, letting the tension play out in a warm undercurrent of frustration and frustration. "What are we, Enzo?" She held his gaze, the intensity palpable, like a taut bowstring ready to snap. Before he could respond, the sound of a nearby glass shattering interrupted them. They both instinctively reached for their sidearms, the playful humor of the night evaporating. "We don't have time for theatrics," she insisted, reining in the emotional tempest brewing within her. They had to stay focused. As they moved toward the mouth of the alley, heavy footfalls approached. A trio of suited men appeared, laughter boiling over as they exited the back of the gala. One of them, a tall figure with slicked back hair, gestured animatedly. "Did you see her face? Classic, as if I'd ever let him get a whiff of my money." Tonja exchanged a glance with Enzo, knowing precisely who they were discussing. This was their entry point into the syndicate's web. Enzo stepped forward, keeping close to the shadows. "Let's gather some intel. I'm not letting this chance slip away." As they slid into an overgrown patch of ivy, Tonja pressed her body against the brick wall, her heart pounding as adrenaline thrummed in her veins. Enzo melted into the darkness beside her. From their concealed vantage, they now had the men in sight. "I'm telling you, it's all about the leverage," one of the men sneered, the moonlight catching his diamond cufflinks. "Find what they love, and you hold their strings." Tonja felt her skin prickle with a mix of dread and determination. This was what they had been hunting, an insight into the syndicate's operations, the very leverage that had ensnared Enzo. Just then, a low growl erupted behind them. Enzo's hand shot out, gripping Tonja's arm with a warning. A feral dog, abandoned and emaciated, lunged from the shadows, baring its teeth. "Shh, easy boy," Tonja murmured, attempting to calm the creature without drawing attention. It paused, perhaps sensing her resolve. "Stay still," Enzo murmured, brushing against her as she knelt slightly. Their bodies were inches apart, their breaths mingling in the strain of the moment. She felt the warmth radiating from him, an unexpected comfort as he leaned in, eyes locked on the threat ahead. "On my count, we'll back away slowly. We can't afford a fight now." "Why not?" I'm ready, she whispered back, a smirk curling at the corner of her lips, feeling a flicker of exhilaration from the adrenaline rushing within. Because, Tonja, he said, his voice a low rasp, we have more to gain by being clever than by fighting. The dog whimpered as they retreated slowly into the embrace of the shadows, eyes trained on the men oblivious to the silent turmoil brewing. As they distanced themselves, Tonja tossed a quick, impish glance at Enzo. The air crackled with shared energy, an unspoken understanding binding them together, even as uncharted waters lay ahead. Then let's keep playing, she said softly, heart still racing. Our turn is coming. Scene 60. The betrayal unfolds outside, a tempest brewed. Clouds, heavy with rain, hung low, turning the sky a tumultuous gray. The wind howled through the dense canopy of the forest surrounding the secluded cabin where Tonja Coleman and her team had taken refuge for their latest mission. Inside, tension crackled like static in the air. Tonja paced the narrow space, a coiled spring of energy and apprehension. The scent of damp wood filled her lungs, mixing with the faint burning of wood in the fireplace that struggled to ward off the chill. She could feel the oppressive weight of something unspoken hanging over them, urging her instincts to high alert. We can't trust anyone but ourselves. I'm telling you, someone in this room is feeding information, Enzo Arnaud said, his deep voice cutting through the murmur of the group. The dim light cast shadows across the handsome features that usually radiated warmth, but now reflected a storm of concern. I think you're wrong, Enzo. This is all paranoia, Rosie Santana interjected, arms crossed defiantly. The vibrant bursts of color in her attire, a kaleidoscope of yellows and blues, couldn't mask the tension that had gripped her heart, echoing in her freckled cheeks. We've been through a lot together. How can you doubt everyone here? We're a team. Behind the gathered group, Jacob, their tech guru, hovered around the glowing screens, anxiously tapping his fingers against the table, glancing at the others with wild eyes. If we can't trust each other, we're already dead. This isn't just about suspicion, it's about survival. There's a mole among us. Suddenly, the temperature dropped further as an unexpected crash echoed from the basement, a door bursting open, revealing a shadow emerging through the darkness. The rhythmic drumming of the rain pounded against the cabin's roof, matching the quickening chaos within the room. Are you kidding me with this? A mole? Who's going to put a target on their own back? Barked Malik, arms folding across his broad chest. We all have skin in this game. Are we all just going to turn against each other? We have no choice, Tonja snapped, stepping forward, the fierce light within her eyes piercing the dimness. If there's a traitor, we need to address it. Now. We can't let this mission fail. I won't let it fail. We're on the precipice of something huge. Each member exchanged glances filled with uncertainty and buried fears. The air buzzed with suspicion, vibrant like a live wire. Just as the internal conflict reached a boiling point, a loud, mocking laugh echoed from the basement. Enough of this bickering. Victoria, their fierce yet enigmatic infiltrator, emerged into the light. Her blue hair hung like an electric curtain framing her sharp features, tension swirling around her like smoke. You're all scared of your own shadows. It's pathetic. No, it's wise, Enzo shot back, indignation lacing his voice. Your bravado wouldn't have you standing here if you weren't hiding something. The challenge hung heavy as he locked eyes with her, the intensity palpable in the room. Tonja felt the heat rising in her, clenching her fists in response to the brewing confrontation. Every muscle was taut, ready for the unexpected. You think you can intimidate us, Victoria? Your bravado means nothing if a real threat is at play. Prove your loyalty. The tension, thick as the impending storm's moisture, shattered as Victoria stepped closer, a glint of something dangerous flickering in her eyes. Loyalty? In this line of work? Let me tell you what loyalty gets you killed, darling. Her voice was silk mixed with spikes, teasing the edge of ire. Before anyone could react, Jacob swore he spotted movement behind Victoria Janelle, their newest recruit, rippling like a shadow amongst the laughter. You think you're all so clever, she hissed, advancing, revealing a concealed weapon. But I'm the one who's been telling the syndicate everything. The realization cut through Tonja like ice, and she darted forward, her training fueling her as she unleashed a flurry of movements, swift and calculated, but before she could reach Janelle, Enzo was already beside her, fluidly grabbing her arm, eyes locked with fire and purpose. "Let me handle this." Janelle's laughter tainted the air, infectious yet chilling. "And here I thought we were friends," she taunted, raising the weapon menacingly. But in a flash, Enzo leaped forward, their teamwork choreographed from years of alliance. Tonja's heart raced as she felt the energy between them, a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. "Together," she yelled, her voice imbued with strength, signaling the intricate balance forged from trust drenched in betrayal. As the storm raged outside, a truth settled in the room. Trust could be as fleeting as the storm clouds breaking, but their resolve only strengthened under fire. Janelle smirked, confidence eroding as she backed away, realizing she might have overplayed her hand. But in that split second, Tonja and Enzo were one fierce and united. "Not today," Enzo whispered, a promise glimmering between the tension, just as the chaos unraveled around them. Scene 61, Shattered Trust. The air in the small cafe hummed with a blend of sizzling bacon, freshly brewed coffee, and the muted chatter of a morning crowd. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting warm patterns on the polished wooden floors. But as Tonja Coleman pushed open the door, the comfort of the cozy setting felt foreign, like stepping into a painting of a world she no longer recognized. The heavy clouds rolling in from the east hinted at an impending storm, both outside and within her. "Coffee?" Enzo Arnaud was already seated at their usual table, his brows knitted together, a patchwork of tension running through his usually easy demeanor. He gestured to the waitress, but his eyes remained fixed on Tonja, a reflection of concern and unspoken words swirling in them. "Sure," she replied, her heart squeezing as she slid into her chair. "We need to talk." There was a tremor in her voice, a ripple effect of all that had transpired in recent days. The lies, the secrets, the barely concealed truths that twisted around their fake engagement like a vine tightening its grip. "Then let's talk." His tone was direct, devoid of warmth, and yet somehow laced with the urgency of unvoiced fears. The sunlight filtered through the window, illuminating his features, but she found herself unable to enjoy it. The cafe felt suffocating, and so did the tension swelling between them. "It's about the syndicate. About us," Tonja said, the words refusing to come out in any order that felt coherent. The emotional weight of every unspoken truth hung in the air like the steamy clouds clustering outside. Enzo leaned back, crossing his arms as he studied her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "We both know we're in deep, and it's getting murkier. You have to trust me, Tonja." "Trust?" The word slipped from her lips, coated with a bitterness she didn't want to feel but couldn't suppress. "You're being blackmailed, Enzo, by people we are trying to take down." The cafe bustled around them, the sound of dishes clattering, laughter echoing from nearby tables, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in their hearts. She could hear the whispers of the patrons, but at that moment it felt as though they were in a vacuum, the world outside blurred by their fears. "I didn't ask for this," he replied, his voice low but edged with frustration. "You think I chose to be in this position? I want to keep you safe." Tension crackled like static electricity in the air. Tonja wanted to respond, to tell him that keeping secrets was only sabotaging that safety, but the truth slipped through her fingers like grains of sand. The waitress arrived with their coffees, pouring with an easy smile that felt jarring against the gravity of their conversation. Tonja wrapped her hands around the warm mug, feeling the heat seep into her palms, grounding, but also igniting an internal flame of urgency. "Enzo, we have to be transparent with each other. I can't be by your side if I don't know what you're hiding." Her voice had softened, punctuated by a genuine plea that somehow stitched the emotional distance they had both been navigating. "Game faces are one thing, but running blind? That's a death wish," he muttered, shaking his head, the vulnerability in his eyes clear, but masked under layers of bravado. Tonja felt it then, a crack in her chest, a deep yearning for connection against the swirling chaos outside their haven. "What if we let each other in? Just a little?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, her heart racing with both the thrill of the idea and the apprehension of what it could mean. His gaze locked onto hers, and an electric tension settled in the space between them. Enzo leaned closer, the scent of his cologne, a mix of cedar and something lightly citrus, pulling her into a world where the chaos fell away. "Tonja," he murmured, his tone shifting, becoming softer, laden with unspoken possibilities. Before she could decipher where the moment was headed, a crack of thunder rumbled outside, reverberating through the cafe, breaking the fragile spell over them. They both pulled back slightly, the reality crashing back into focus, but not before she felt the world tilt dramatically on its axis, the moment poised between them, a kiss that could change everything. "Maybe we should," Enzo began, but the storm rolled in heavy, drowning out his words as rain began to pelt against the windows, almost as if nature was urging them to confront the tempest brewing within themselves. "We need to regroup," she said, her breath hitching with the intensity of the moment. "For now, that's all I can think about." "Right," Enzo said, the resolve in his voice steady, but the flicker of something deeper still lingering in the air. "Let's focus on what's next." Tonja nodded, feeling the tremor of unspoken connection thrumming between them. But as the storm raged outside, a lingering question remained. Could they truly trust each other, even when every storm they faced could tear them apart? "Let's start by figuring out what we can do next," she suggested, taking a deliberate sip of her coffee, both comfort and fortification rushing through her. Enzo echoed her gesture, his gaze unwavering. "We'll get through this," he assured, an unspoken promise underlining his words as the cafe buzzed around them like a distant storm of its own. Scene 62, Duel of Wits. The air was thick with the humidity of a summer night, clinging to skin like an uninvited guest. Tonja Coleman stood on the edge of the abandoned warehouse, the skeletal structure looming behind her.